The link for the South Dakota All website is in the comments section if you need that. A couple of announcements first. The South Dakota Awards deadline has been extended to May 15th. Please check the South Dakota All website for details. The South Dakota PD team is looking for additional input on the training that South Dakota adult education instructors would like to participate in as part of our virtual summer summit. Please check your email for a link to the survey that will be coming out later today. The survey will also be available on the South Dakota All website. We're going to use GoToMeeting today. That's what you're all on. There's a place to ask questions and make comments by selecting the little conversation bubble. And in the chat, we will be monitoring the chat. I see at the top of the screen is a view who's talking icon or a little button. You can customize who and what you view in this section. You have access to your microphone and camera by hovering your mouse at the bottom of the screen. If you're having trouble streaming today, at some point you may want to we want to see your face, of course, at least at the beginning if we can, but if you're noticing you're having some trouble with streaming, you can turn off your camera. That generally makes a difference. And you can also turn off everybody so you don't see everybody else's videos as well, and that will conserve some of your bandwidth. Everyone will be muted until Tracy starts her Q&A session. All right, now to our presenter. Tracy Palecek is a licensed professional counselor and human services professional who also has a passion for supporting and encouraging those who brave souls in the helping professions. She understands that working with people means dealing with complex problems and complex emotions. Tracy has many years of experience working with trauma and is also an adverse childhood experience master, trainer, and fellow. That is a long title. She's passionate about helping people overcome tough circumstances on their journey to healing. Please help me welcome Tracy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to see your faces. I actually asked Kim to do that because as an extrovert who does a lot of trainings every year and who's out in the community, I'm doing a lot of virtual stuff now, and it's a great substitute, but it's definitely not my preferred method of training. I like to see you, I like to interact, so welcome. I'm excited today. I'm here to talk to you about burnout and stress and how we can overcome this. I'm going to pack a lot into like 45. I'm going to try not to talk too fast, which I tend to do. I even have a little sticky note here that says slow down, so hopefully I can do that. Please utilize the chat as we're going along. As Kim said, we'll stop at the end and I will answer questions. I will be doing a series of 3 of these, and some of this information will play off of each other, and Kim will have resources for each training posted on her website, which she'll put into the chat as well. You can also at any time email me or shout out to me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Palecek Therapy and Consulting LLC on Facebook. If you have questions or need any information, you think of something later. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about what research says helps with burnout. Now, I'm sure none of you know anything about burnout. You're like, why am I here? I mean, that's really crazy. This is a weird topic. You guys are serving people who have complex problems. We are in the helping professions, even as educators in the adult learner field. You guys are dealing with people in high crisis situations. You already are doing amazing things. In fact, if you're doing something along these lines, put it in the chat. Let's talk about it. I'll shout out to you. What I've drilled down on today is how you can help yourself. And I'm also going to try to make mention of how we can utilize these things with our learners, although I am going to focus a little bit more on that in detail next week at my presentation. So let's see here. Let's start with the definition of burnout. I like this definition because it has a lot of like psychology words, and don't we like to be challenged about psychology and mumbo jumbo, but it really says that a syndrome of emotional exhaustion. Raise your hand if you've ever felt emotionally exhausted. Hello, all right. I'm feeling that way now, homeschooling, doing work from home, doing teletherapy clients from home. I I think depersonalization is the next one, and that's a fancy word for a coping skill that we use when we are feeling emotionally exhausted is we depersonalize. You've all known those coworkers, maybe it's you yourself, who after a time of working with high crisis students or working with really complex things and not seeing a lot of success, you tend to, as a coping mechanism, depersonalize, meaning you actually step back from connecting with people and connecting with your students and connecting with your coworkers. That's a sign of burnout, because as human beings, we are wired for connection. Our brain is actually wired for connection. And connecting and being in relationship is one of the first things you have to do to heal trauma of the brain. So depersonalization, that means you're stepping back as a means to protect yourself. A reduced sense of personal accomplishment, meaning you just don't feel like you're making a difference anymore. And many of us, did any of you get into this field to make tons of money? If you did, we need a chat, okay? You and I need to have a little chat about this. I got into social work to help people to feel a sense of meaning and purpose, and because I was curious and loved people. And the very thing that you love to do and can also be that double-edged sword that can ultimately be hurting you so much in areas of burnout and stress. So keeping in mind this definition, I want to talk about some of the symptoms. Again, we're going to do a little psychology mumbo jumbo here. Some of the big symptoms of burnout are you have all these different areas. The biggest thing about burnout is it doesn't just stop in a certain place. It's your whole body, your whole self, your brain, your soul, your spirit, everything. So affective, that means really your mood. That's how you present. That's how you generally feel. You have a gloomy, depressed mood. You can have aggression and anxiety. We typically see this a little bit more in our male people who are experiencing burnout. They'll often figure out, why am I so irritable? Why am I so angry? They tend to go there a little bit first. And then, of course, heightened anxiety. Everything triggers you. You're trying to avoid anxiety. Cognitive means our brain. You guys are teachers. You're very smart. You know this. Really, it's the studies about how stress and burnout impact our memory alone are amazing. We've had people who thought they were having early onset Alzheimer's, and by the time we got into a medical field to look at this, it was the amount of toxic stress in their life. It was the absolute feeling of burnout, of depersonalization. They couldn't remember things. Again, hopelessness. You're going to have physical complaints. I worked with a coworker for a long time, and she was a veteran in the field when I was starting out in trauma, and I was in my 20s. And back, 20 some years ago, what we knew about trauma, what we suspected, we're now seeing proven by research. But back then, when you said you were burnt out, they said, well, just eat right, just exercise. And I'm like, I don't even like to exercise when I'm feeling great. When I'm feeling terrible, I really don't want to exercise, right? But what we know about this is I spent a ton of time in the ER with neck and back issues, which later was determined to be stress related. I just held all of that into my body and didn't know a way to really get it out. And nobody in the field at that time was telling me how to do that. I had a coworker who'd been in for a long time who said, I think you're stressed out. I think this is impacting you. And I think it's coming up in your body. And I thought, what? That's so silly. And of course, now she was a genius. Looking back, you begin to behave in ways that reduce stress. So if you are in your classrooms, you're seeing yourself being sick. You're seeing that dreaded going to work. Have you ever kind of gripped the steering wheel on the way to work going, I don't want to be here. You get sick a lot. You might be relying on substances. That glass of wine is turning into 2 glasses of wine. You're relying on things. If you're noticing yourself escaping, this is a sign. And again, motivational. You just don't have it in you. You just don't feel that spark as often. You just don't want to get up every day and innovate and create. And that's what we do. So that's a huge sign. That's actually often the first sign. When things become routine, when you just stop looking for the wins, when you just start seeing all of the negatives, again, big sign of burnout. What do we want instead of burnout? Well, I like this definition of a culture of wellness. And this was a study that was done by Young and Lambie, and they studied high school counselors, school counselors. So one of the reasons I like this is that school counselors, you guys remember, they actually go through the same amount of training as I did as a therapist, a mental health therapist, getting your master's degree in counseling. And then they go into the school setting where they then are not allowed to really counsel people. They're actually, in our modern world, they're required to do testing. They're required to do sex ed. They're required to run the PTA night. Like they wear all these hats that they weren't really trained for. And there was a lot of what we call role confusion, because they thought they were going to be doing something and then they ultimately weren't doing something. So the studied them and found out, how do we keep people safe? And these are some of the things that they needed to do. One of the things here, and I'm going to move this so I can read this here. A recent study suggested that a culture of wellness includes collaborative management. What does that mean? It means you have to have a boss that's not terrible. Okay? Now, we don't have a lot of control over that, right? But if you are a boss, you can ask yourself, am I collaborative? Meaning, do I have a pulse on what my teachers are doing and what their barriers are? And do I invite them into that conversation and say, how can we limit these? That promotes a culture of wellness, actually lowers our stress. Counselors, they said they needed to stay in those policies and they needed a socially supportive environment. Now that means you have to have coworkers who aren't terrible. Okay, we all have had these coworkers. All right, this is the negative Nelly, the Debbie Downer. This is the sabotager. This is the person who doesn't do any of the work, and you're always doing their work or you're covering for them. Now again, you have a lot of control over that, but your agency can have policies and procedures that promote a socially supportive environment. You can actually learn how to be socially supportive. One of the techniques I'm going to teach you today is called Reframing Up, and it's about how to be a better coworker. And it's going to help you, and it's going to help your stress level too. So you can learn that. That can be learned. Again, reduction of role stress, too many hats. This is often impossible in the work that we do. I know that many of you are unplugging toilets and teaching math and running out and shoveling the walk and doing all this stuff because we have to do this. We're in a small agency. We're often in these places that have zero funding. If you're going to have all those roles, then it's important that management recognizes it, rewards it, frames it in a teamwork that says, I love that you are a part of a team, and minimize it as much as we can. If you want to be teaching, if you want to be motivating, then make sure that we're doing a lot of that as well. And then lastly, supervision. Most of us do not have regular, routine, and what we would consider therapeutic or clinical supervision. Most supervision in a bureaucratic system says, hey, are you meeting your stats? Did you get your work? Are you meeting some sort of goal? And those are important, but even more important is to say, how are you doing? What can I help you in your professional development? Are there skills that I can help you develop as a boss? Those actually lower our stress, give us intrinsic goals to work for in the workplace, and it creates that culture of social support and collaborative management. I'm going to move this over here. So what I'm going to talk to you today are about 3 concepts that are proven to reduce stress. I'm going to teach you the Reframe Up technique. This is going to be how you can reframe coworkers, negative students, anybody around you, and then I'm going to teach you how to reframe your own thinking, because our thoughts become our feelings, which become our actions. And so we're going to teach you that technique. I'm going to work with you on redefining success. So often our idea of success is not realistic or achievable. We're going to walk you through how to set realistic goals that lowers our stress. And finally, I'm going to talk about how you can renew yourself in some pretty specific ways to your personality. We're going to use technology. We're going to use what research says about friendship. And we're going to give you some basic ideas to start this journey if you haven't already. Now, those of you who are sitting there, I'm looking at you. Who wants to stand up and show us their yoga pants? I know you're not all business on top. You're like yoga on the bottom. Who wants? Just kidding. Okay. Stay with me, guys. Stay with me. Zoom fatigue is a real thing, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Reframe Up. The reason I use these terms, Reframe Up, is it is in our control to reframe the information that we receive And it is within our control to decide if we're going to down spiral into negativity or we're going to reframe our thoughts upward into productivity. So that's where this language comes from. So I'm going to explain this concept to you by starting with this first thing here. We're going to have a quick chat about venting. All right. Research used to say that venting was amazing. Research used to tell us that we need to get it all out. We got to cry it all out. There are rooms in New York City, maybe not right now with our situation, where you can pay hundreds of dollars an hour to go into that room and smash everything in that room with a sledgehammer. Now, while that sounds kind of cool and fun, that's a way to get out your feelings, to vent. There's hatchet throwing. We have this in town. What research tells us about venting is interesting. There is a study called Bushman's Hot Sauce Study, and this study is an amazing study. You guys can actually Google this. It's probably, Penn and Teller does a really funny reenactment and kind of a documentary on this, the Bushman's Hot Sauce Study. So what this study entailed was they took graduate students who were under incredible pressure, high pressure graduate students, and they told them that their classmates were going to be grading their assignment and that this grade was going to be worth 50% of their grade. So they took these high crisis students, they took them in a room, and what they really did was, these are of course researchers who took their work and graded it really badly and horrible comments, and they basically failed these tests. And then they brought them their results in this lab, and they said, they gave them a moment to absorb this. They took half of these students. Now remember, everyone got terrible grades. Everybody is upset. Half of these students, they took and taught them venting techniques. They gave them pillows. They told them how to scream and hit things and do this. The other half of the students were just allowed to sit there. They were not allowed to do anything. They were not given any instruction on how to do this. They had to just sit there and live with it. Then they went back to these two groups and they had a cup of the world's hottest hot sauce. And they gave these students an opportunity for revenge on the person or classmate who graded their paper. All right. Now, wouldn't this be kind of fun? So what they found was the students who were given the venting techniques, right? They were allowed to fill this cup up as high as they could with this hot sauce, and those researchers were going to make them drink it, make whoever graded their paper drink it. Those who had the venting techniques, the hitting the pillow, the screaming, filled the cup to the top over 60% of the time, okay? Those who had to sit with their anger and their frustration and calm down, much lower percent. They only 30% of the time did anybody ever fill that cup over halfway, much lower percent on the revenge. They then gave them fill in the blank word tests. They had to say, I feel blank. When something happens, this happens. Those who were doing the venting techniques, the screaming, the raging, the pillows, were far more likely to use attack and negative words like rape, kill, hurt, okay, than those who were asked to sit with their rage and anger. Fill in the blank was the same way. And what does this study tell us? It confirms what brain research tells us, that venting on a regular basis in particular actually increases our stress, it increases our angry thoughts, it distorts our cognition to be negative and all that way. Now let's deconstruct this a little bit. We've all known coworkers, we've all known students who have anger issues, right? If you consistently deal with adversity by activating that parasympathetic nervous system, you will create pathways in your brain that will make it very efficient to go there all the time and make it very difficult for you to self-regulate, meaning calm down. So we don't advocate venting as a good technique. We advocate emotional regulation. And when you're working with students and when you're working with yourself, are you getting angry? Are you getting rageful about something small over time? The more you entertain that and the less you calm down, the more your brain will go there as a first resort. So what can we do instead? We're going to learn this reframe up technique. We're going to reframe our venting by spiraling up. Now, this technique I'm going to show you is about if somebody comes to you venting, how you can kind of head it off. And then I'm going to show you the cognitive behavioral technique to do it on yourself. Okay. So Karen comes in after dealing with a difficult student and talks to Susie. Karen comes in and says, oh my gosh, if I have to deal with that student again, I'm just going to go insane. She comes in here all the time. She works for 20 minutes, gives up and just walks out. And I drop what I'm doing to try to help her and I can't stand it anymore. Okay. I'm not saying anybody's doing this, Karen, wherever you are. I apologize to anyone whose name is Karen on this call. I'm just using that as a name. Okay. So Susie has two choices at this point. Susie can go, oh my gosh, I know. She did that to me the other day and I was right in the middle of tests. She just expected me to drop everything and walk out and she's so ungrateful. Now, if Karen and Susie do that, they've down spiraled into venting and then they're supposed to be Susie Sunshine and go out and serve the students that they serve because they're super happy. No, they're really, really negative. Their whole worldview then becomes negative for the rest of the day and then they spread that outward, right? Now, what if you could help Karen reframe that up, and how would that look? It would look something like this. We're going to utilize these techniques I have on the screen. Karen comes in, says her spiel. Susie lets her vent a little bit because you kind of want to get it all out, but you're not reacting, you're not encouraging, you're looking there and you're going to say, I'm sorry, it sounds like you're having a bad day, right? You're not going to talk about what she's talking about. You're not going to validate the negativity about the student or the coworker. You're just going to validate her as a person and her struggling because we all struggle. Then you're going to encourage the empathy for those we work with. I know that student you're talking about, and I know that it took so long for her to even come in here to get her GED. I know that she's got 3 kids at home and her sister just got put in jail for meth, and she's got her 2 nieces in there as well. She probably doesn't feel like she has time. She's just really struggling. Words are important. We're going to always focus on the positive and building empathy for our students and our coworkers. One, that's good for us, and it's good for the person you're talking to help reframe them, and it doesn't leave us with those toxic negativity of reinforcing negative behavior in students. Words are important, what we say and how we say them. I'm going to make a little short note here. Many moons ago, when I was head of a trauma program for sexual assault survivors and domestic violence survivors, this is tough work. I think next to you guys and some other people, this is one of the toughest jobs I've ever had, dealing with people who are traumatized and living in a shelter, not in their home, and working and dealing with people's daily needs and having to get aspirin for them and having to get up in the middle of the night and having to monitor when people are going in and out with their kids. It's soul killing for the workers, and it's certainly more soul killing and hard for those going through it. And one of the things I came across one day as I was coming in was I was hearing 2 coworkers talking bad about a client. And I just decided then and there that I was going to have a policy, and I brought them both in and I said, hey, I get that you are struggling and we are going to work on that. I'm going to help you. I'm going to walk you through this, but we absolutely cannot say negative things about clients in this space. And if I hear it, I'm going to have to address it. It's a rule. It's just a rule because we need to be in charge of our thoughts, and we need to be in charge as the healthiest people in the room, even if we're struggling and our job is hard. Imagine if that client would have heard that. Imagine the trauma that would trigger, and imagine, would that help them complete their academic goals in any way? Absolutely not. It could lead them to leave. Many of our students, and you guys know this, have left high school or left because, they rarely say to me, it's because the work is so hard, or it's because I couldn't understand this. It was because I didn't feel wanted. I didn't feel like they cared if I was there or not. I felt like they thought I couldn't do it. And many of them, of course, are always struggling with things at home. So imagine if they were to hear that in passing and overhear that. So I make clear rules about how and what we can say about clients. I think Lori Larson's on this call. I used to work with Lori. She knows that about me, right, Lori? Okay. So back to Susie and Karen. You're going to say and try to build empathy, and then you're going to say, end your little session with Karen with the solution. Karen, do you need 5 minutes? Can I take over for you? What you seem like to be really stressed out lately. What can I do to help you feel less stressed out? What can I do to help you with this? Do we need to talk about time off with our boss? Do you need to work on paperwork for a while and I take over some things? What is it that I can do for you? And if they're resistant, as people are, check in with them and say, what can we do here? Can I work with this person the next time they come in for a while? Because sometimes people trigger us. That's the other thing. And we're going to talk about that in the cognitive behavioral thing. I can have all the empathy in the world, but I have history too. I have history with people and experiences. And sometimes somebody just rubs you the wrong way. And that's okay. Reaching out for help and saying, you know what, this student and I just are not clicking, and I've tried and tried and tried. Is there a way we could switch off and on if that's possible? So you want to end with solution. And then you want to use scripts if necessary. I am a therapist and a social worker for 20 years. Talking is my game, right? So I have loaded in my back pocket things that I say often to people. And as long as I am saying these phrases with meaning, which I do, it's great to have those things in my back pocket when these conversations come up, right? So sometimes we want to develop scripts around difficult situations. So one of the things that I gave you guys as a resource, and Kim is going to link it to the page, is just a list of encouraging scripts. What are some things you can say to this struggling coworker to help reframe them up? We want to spiral them up instead of going downhill. And this is just a list of canned phrases. What you can do with this is keep it, print it out, print your own, use your own language and say it with meaning. I know you're going to get through this. You're an awesome teacher, Karen. We all have been there and struggling. I appreciate you even being open to solutions, those kind of things. You've been through hard things before, you can do it again. It's just a list of those. So that's going to be available for you on the website. We're going to switch now to the reframe up technique on yourself. Now, you guys know about cognitive behavioral therapy, and you can see in this graphic here, cognitive behavioral therapy says that our emotions create our thoughts, which create our behavior. And if we can change our thoughts, we can change our emotions around those thoughts, and then our behavior changes and our mood changes. It's an amazing, amazing concept. I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown on how to do this for yourself. And I'm telling you, this is actually really easy to teach students depending on the setting you have. Sometimes if they have to write a piece or they have to do something and you notice a student that really has some negative thoughts, you might just have them research cognitive behavioral therapy. Say, can you explain this to me in a 2-minute, just in a 2-minute conversation? Have them start thinking about this. And then sometimes you can secretly teach them these things without having to give them all the psychological terms. So let's talk about how we mentally reframe personal and professional triggers. Okay, back to Karen and Susie. I'm going to change this up. I'm going to tell you a personal story. This is a couple years ago. I was working in a poverty reduction program using some research-based methods. And I was working with a gentleman, and again, many of our students, they're high crisis and they are very resourceful. Words are important. Now, there's a big difference, for example, between the word manipulative and resourceful, right? Do we see how we're using words are important here? Now, manipulative can mean really negative things. That means this person's out to get me. I got to watch this person. My radar's on all the negative stuff. And resourceful means, that's totally awesome how they're problem solving in the world they live in, right? So those are important. I had a client, after 20 years of doing this, I'm reframing up all the time. I think I'm rocking and rolling, and nobody is immune. I had a client who, he was living at the mission. He had 4 boys, and I want to give you guys just an insight into what living at the mission is here in Rapid City at that time. If you were a male, you have to stay in the male side. And you couldn't, the only part that you could stay in that had families together where you could be with a family was if you were a mom with kids. So if you were a male, a single dad, there's really no place for you. So here he was with 4 kids, the youngest being 6. They were ages 6 to 14, lost his house, homeless, having to sleep in the mission on the men's side, meaning with all the single men, no way to really keep your family together in a room. You're all out in the open. It was very stressful. You don't get to stay there and hang out and help your kids with your homework if you're at the mission. You have to be gone during the day. So he's trying to shuffle them around, getting them places. He's really, really struggling, and he's trying to work and find a job. Now, this guy was just resourceful as all get out. By the time he got to me, he was telling me about everybody he had talked to and what he was going to do. And he was just jaded and hard. And I'm used to that. Poverty is difficult and tough. But as we're talking, he goes, I was doing my best encouragement, guys. I had all my words of encouragement out. I had my encouraging scripts. I'm like, you've done hard things before. I'm like, meaning this. And he just deadpans looks at me, and he's not connecting with me. And he just goes, stop right there. What I really need you to do, because I know you know this doctor that I met at this fundraiser, I need you to call her and convince her to pay for my rent for several months. That's what I need from you. And I was like, I got really triggered, guys. Instantly inside my head, I was like, I would love it if somebody would just pay my rent for 5 months. And boy, that sounds like a great thing. Like, you don't have to work for that and blah, blah, blah. And I got really triggered by this. So what did I have to do? First of all, I had to observe that. And that's the first thing in cognitive behavioral technique. You have to recognize that this emotion came up and that it's negative, and that saying it and thinking it is not going to help you. So how did I recognize this? It's the emotional awareness. My technique is I use a big stop sign. If I get triggered like that, I recognize the feeling. I say what it is out loud, because that actually activates the opposite emotional side of my brain, which is the mental clarity, cognitive, intentional decision-making side of my brain that says, I just got triggered here by this client. What am I going to do? Okay. I imagine a stop sign, stop the thought, meaning I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail of how he's manipulating everybody and blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to stop. And believe me, we can do this. We can do it. It takes practice. So I imagine a stop sign. That's the thought stopping piece. And then I have to replace this thought. Now, here's the key with thought replacement, guys. You don't have to feel like this in the moment. I didn't feel like it. I felt annoyed. I felt upset. I felt like he wasn't appreciative of what I was trying to do for him. I felt like he was being manipulative. I felt all those feelings, but I need to replace the thought. So what did I say to myself about this client sitting in front of me? I went to my script. And I said, this is a guy that's tired. He's been doing this now for 6 months. He's looking for a quick answer. He doesn't want to connect with me, and I don't blame him, because I'm just another person or obstacle in the way of him getting relief. And I need to just be kind and honest. So what did I say to him? I said those things. I said, boy, I love how your brain works. Sometimes I say that all the time. If you hear me saying that to a client, it means I'm in awe of the level of their resourcefulness, or I just can't imagine where they're going. That's kind of a placeholder for me. I said, I love how you're trying to solve this problem. I know you're tired. I know that you think that is the way that's going to solve this. And I'm not going to contact that person and get rent for you, because that's not what I do. What I can do is help you find a path to get out of poverty. But the path out of here is not something I'm going to do or something anyone else is going to do for you. You're going to do it, and you can do it. And I know it's hard, and I'll try to help find supports along the way, but you're the one that's going to do this. And he was kind of deflated, and he was kind of angry, and I just let him sit with his feelings a little bit, and I let him kind of absorb it. And he said, okay, what do we need to do? And then we started working together, and so again, you're going to emotionally be aware that you're triggered. It could be Karen or Susie or your boss. Oh boy, that made me angry. I'm going to stop. I'm going to imagine that stop sign, and I'm going to stop the thought. I'm just going to sweep it away. I'm not going to think any more bad things about that person if I can. And then I'm going to replace it with something else. She's probably having a bad day. She seems really stressed out. And if you want to go high level on this, which is what I recommend, reach out to that person. I'm going to put a little card in her desk. I'm going to say, hey, I noticed today you were having a bad day, and I just want you to know that I think you're amazing and that you can do this. Because what does that do for them? that might be a pick-me-up for them. And guess what it does for you? It increases really good hormones, which help lower toxic stress hormones for you. It puts out something good. It's a proactive approach. And so that's something you're actually doing for yourself as well. So, okay, guys, now if you have questions about this, put it in the chat because I'm just going to keep rolling here. We're going to talk next about redefining success. Everybody right now, I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. Grab a piece of paper or grab your phone, grab something here, and I want you to just jot down the most stressful aspects of your work. Now, this should not be difficult for any of us, right? We should be able to just fire off a few. So I'm going to give you just 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And I'm looking at all of you doing work, trying to see all your faces. I'm scrolling up. I see some familiar faces. Is that Rhonda Leno? Hi, Rhonda. Steph, there's Steph Ritberger. I'm rolling down. Judy, Lori, doesn't have her camera on. Lori, you're in yoga pants. I bet you are. Okay, raise your hand if that was difficult to do. It's really easy for us to identify some of these stressful things in our work, isn't it? So I'm going to show you what I just put down a few in anticipation of what you might put on here in case I couldn't really read the chat. But if you have some I didn't mention, put it in the chat or ask us the question like, how would you reframe this, or how would you handle this stressful aspect in light of what we're talking about today? So did anybody put any of these things on there? Raise your hand if any of these are some here on here. Terrible boss. Don't raise your hand if your boss is on the call though. Okay, perfect. All right. So typically in what I hear most is red tape, bureaucracy, the amount of paperwork or documentation I have to do. I got into this field like I didn't want to be an accountant, right? I want to help people. In fact, I'm the type of person that's actually terrible at that. My husband is an electrical engineer, and we got married because I hired him in college to be my math tutor. And I married him so I would never have to do math again or balance a checkbook again. So, I mean, that's how resourceful I am, folks. So I want to help people. These are not my strengths often, and it's often the most stressful part of my job is keeping up on all of the stuff that's not people related or teaching related or however you guys are doing this. So but can I, terrible boss. I have had a terrible boss several times. I've had amazing bosses and mentors. We can't always control the personalities who have great influence over our day and our duties and how that looks. Red tape, again, that's really the bureaucracy. What is the operational level of your organization? Are there things that you're doing that you just think are nuts and you can't make sense of it at the level you're working, and why people at the top are making those decisions? That's really, really stressful. And then, of course, the vicarious trauma of our students, of the people we're serving. What do all of these things have in common? And what I will tell you is that most of the time, the most stressful aspects of our work are things that we do not have control over. We do not have direct control over these things. I cannot decide how many students are coming in. I don't get to often decide my workload. I don't get to decide that this paperwork gets to be done or not. So what do we do about that? We need to think about how we're defining success. If I'm defining success every single day as an adult educator, and it's like everybody's going to learn, everyone's going to get this, everyone gets their GED or certification. What's wrong with that level of success? What's wrong with that? It's that you don't have direct control over that. The variables on which that can happen are not in your control, right? So how do we define success? Feeling successful every day is one of the most anti-stress things you can do, and it has to be daily. If I get up every day and make these crazy, crazy things that I need to get done and I have no chance or no control over achieving them, I just feel terrible. That increases my stress. So when you're defining success within your work, it must be within your control, okay? You can say, I'm going to go to work today and I'm going to be clear and I'm going to be kind and I'm going to reframe up wherever I can. You can be successful at that every single day because you have control of that. It's clear, measurable, and realistic. You can daily achieve that daily. And then we want to make sure that we're flexible enough to redefine our success as our situations change. I mean, with COVID-19, how has your success definition changed? Mine is, homeschooling. Can I get 3 things done today? Can I make sure my kids at least get the minimum done today? Those are not goals I thought I would be setting for myself for success, but I have to redefine in these uncertain times. And actually, one of my webinars, we're going to go deeper into that, but think about how you define success every day. And if you're not defining success every day, you are denying yourself an opportunity to have meaning and purpose in your work every day. And you're denying yourself a stress relieving opportunity. So sit down and say, what am I going to do today? I used to have a technique where I would put 3 rubber bands on one arm and I would make a game of it. I would go into my office and I would say, I'm going to compliment and uplift 3 people today. And as soon as I did it, I would move the band to my other arm. And it was like a game I played with myself. Or I'm going to reach out to 4 clients today that I know are struggling. Boom, I'm successful that day. All of the things, again, that we're doing for others, we're doing ultimately for ourselves. So think about your success. What is your success? How are you defining it? And are you doing it daily? Now, what can you do about these things that aren't in your control? I'm just going to give you a little heads up. You maybe want to work with your supervisor. I don't know any supervisor who, if you went in during a supervision meeting and said, you know what, I would really love to work and be proactive about changing some of these policies we have to better help us as educators and better help the outcomes of our students. And here's some ideas I have, and here's some research I've done. I don't know any boss who wouldn't love that. Now, if you do something proactive like that, doing an action-oriented thing, stress relieving, right? Now, you don't have control over whether your supervisor will take your ideas. You don't have control over whether they'll ever come to fruition. But if your success is that you posed that you did the research and you were positive about it, you're successful, right? You want to talk to them about defining your roles. What can you do about your caseload? Most often, the people who are doing this work have the best ideas about how to do this. Maybe it's cross training. I want to switch with her, and we're going to do 1 week here and 1 week here. And can we do some data and see how this works and see if it makes us feel better? And then, of course, self-care. Your number 1 success point is you taking care of yourself, which transitions us quite nicely into our last goal here, which is the self-renewal. Research tells us that many of us have, if you ask people if they have hobbies, they'll say they have hobbies. How many of you, put it in the chat, gardening, crocheting? I mean, everybody will say that. Then you ask people, how much time do you spend on those every week? And you'll get a different answer. Most people do not spend very much time, if at all, on things they say are their hobbies during the week. I'm going to tell you guys the secret of mental health, right? Right here is it's not waiting until you feel better to do things. It's the doing of stress relieving things that bring about the feelings of stress relief. You have to do things to feel better. Now that makes sense, right? It's kind of like exercise. If you don't, when you're walking and you're starting an exercise program, well, you don't lose 40 pounds overnight. You don't feel amazing that day sometimes. In fact, sometimes you feel terrible. Sometimes it hurts and you're sore and I got to fit this into my day and I got to give up watching Netflix to go on a walk. But over time, you do this over time, and what happens? You start to feel better. You are in better health. So doing things, stress relieving things, it's the same principle, but most of us have to carve out that time. So Research tells us that if we spend time several times a week doing things that are stress relieving to us, we will lower our stress over time. Hobbies that have a beginning, middle, and an end, like gardening, like cooking, like painting, hobbies that have a physical result at the end of them, tend to help us feel less stress if we're in professions in which we don't often see outcomes, right? You're working with students over time. How many of them do you see achieve? Sometimes you see people coming back for years and years, and we're not readily seeing success, right? So if our hobbies are shorter and have those achievable things, we're going to feel less stressed out. Family, friends, and social support. Research says that we do not spend time with people that we say are our friends as much as we should. It should be 2 to 3 times a week spending time with people that make us laugh. Who makes you laugh? Who do we spend time with? I know pre-COVID-19, all of my holidays are filled up with family, right? Now, do we always like our family? Does our family make us laugh all the time? Sometimes, and if it is, good for you. But are you spending time with people who bring joy to you? And I always talk about the crappy dinner party, so I'm going to mention that right now. You guys can Google this. You can secretly do it while you're on this webinar, right? Just, look like you're really frantically typing notes about the important things I'm saying. Crappy dinner party. I always, before I suggest things, I try it, right? So we did this crappy dinner party experiment. It's been 3 years ago now that we did this. And I told my husband, every month we're having a crappy dinner party, and we're going to try this for several months and see if it actually works. Now, the premise behind the crappy dinner party is you text your friends, and text a bunch of them. The first time I did it, I think I texted 16 or 20 people, which is so nerve-wracking for me, right? On a Wednesday, and said, crappy dinner party, come to my house Friday, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna have some main dish. Bring something if you have it. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Still come, and we're just gonna hang out. I texted 16 to 20 people, I think, and the rules are you cannot overly clean your house. Now, did everybody just get anxious right there? Like, what? People are gonna come to my house? I mean, isn't that the number one reason we don't have people over? Oh, my house isn't clean. Oh, my floor is dirty. We are denying ourselves life-giving, joyful experiences because of a dirty floor, people. And when you go over to somebody's house, do you really notice that their floor is dirty? Generally not. If they have wine, I don't notice if their floor is dirty, right? I'm having fun. I'm having a good time, right? So you can't overly clean your house. Now, I get exception to the bathroom, okay? Because I had to clean the bathroom because I was really, it was giving me a lot of anxiety. And I have 3 children, so I was like, all right, I did clean the bathroom. And then I did just a quick dust up. You can't overly prepare food. So I went to my freezer, I pulled out ground beef, and I pulled out spaghetti, and I made a huge pot of spaghetti, and I pulled out cheese and crackers. That's what I had. And then whatever wine or beer we had there. 12 people showed up. And they were random people that I never thought would come sometimes. And they brought their kids, and they brought random food, which was hilarious. Somebody brought like a big bag of popcorn. Somebody brought like, I think we had corn that I had to cook or something. Anyway, it was really fun. And guess what? We laughed for 2 to 3 hours. 12 people showed up. We had the best time ever. I hadn't seen some of these people, and I never thought about my dirty floor once. When they left, my husband and I both said, that was so fun. That was so fun getting to see people. So I encourage you to do that. That lowers your stress. I got to go quickly here. I keep rolling on. Gratitude. Research says that if you routinely, and again, you're training your brain, if you routinely locate, identify, and then write down what you are grateful for on the daily. Some people like to do it at the end of the night. They think about their day and what happened during that day and what they were grateful for that day. I actually like to do it in the morning. And I think about what I'm really grateful for right now because it kind of carries me through the day, whatever works for you. What it does is it starts activating your radar to things that are good. That's what it does to your brain. So I actually bought a 3-minute gratitude journal for all my kids during this, and I forced them to do it because I'm their mom and I can force them to do some stuff. And every day they write 3 things they're grateful for, and then with the littler kids, it has a place for them to draw a picture, and then it has a smiley face that kind of shows really happy to sort of and they kind of mark how they're feeling that day. So they're actually developing skills about emotional regulation. How am I feeling and what I'm grateful for? And then last but not least, guys, personal therapy. If you have been struggling, if you are feeling vicarious trauma, it is totally, totally normal in the field that you are in. And if you haven't sought personal therapy before, let me just give you a quick rundown on what it's like. It is not laying on a couch talking about your deepest, darkest secrets, I guess, unless you want to. It's more like talking to somebody like me. It's like meeting a friend. It's like, what do you want to work on? How can I reframe your negative thinking? People like me who are doing therapy are highly trained. We're curious. We love people. We want to see what makes you tick. And we have all kinds of interventions to work with you based on how you like to operate in life. And we offer those to you. And we sit with you. And we listen to you. And we brainstorm with you. And we remind you how amazing you are. That's what therapy should be like. And there are different therapists out there. But if you have any questions about how to find one or what it looks like, you can message me and I'll be happy to help you do that. And there's no shame in therapy. This is something you can tell your students too, because many of our students have trauma and they have no access to therapy and they have no idea what it's like. And it's kind of a middle class construct in a lot of ways. But I tell clients all the time, it's no different than if you get an injury and you go to a physical therapist for a few months to rehab that injury and get back to your normal life. It's the exact same thing, that taking care of yourself and getting through that. All right, quickly, I'm going to go through technology before I do the chat. So if you have questions while I'm going over these apps, now would be a good time to put it in the chat. I'm going to just highlight two apps that I really love, that I use all the time with clients, that I use all the time with people who I'm coaching in businesses, employers, employees, because I think it's really amazing to start utilizing something that calms our parasympathetic nervous system. And our clients, even if they're in high crisis and low resources, typically have a smartphone and love to use it. So this is something we can actually tune on to our students. I'm going to start with this one first, Calm. If any of you have had this, put in the chat what your experience is with it. I love this app. It is a meditation app. It helps with sleep, with anxiety. It does body scan meditations, which again, when we're working with our students, begins to teach them how to lower that anxiety, how to lower their emotional reactivity, right? The cool thing about Calm is that it has different things you can pick from. And if people have trouble sleeping, sleep is very important for healing the brain. And sleep is also very important for you as those people on the front lines. You need to be recharged and healed. You can actually have Matthew McConaughey read you a sleep story in this app. I mean, ladies, you know what I'm talking about out there. That's just worth the price right there, right? You can actually have all different kinds of actors. The drawbacks of Calm are that it is a paid app, so sometimes this isn't accessible for us or for our students. One of the cool things about Calm is that they work with businesses. So some businesses, as a self-care thing, provide access to this Calm app as a mental health thing for their employees. So I would like to start seeing this done in our classrooms. Wouldn't it be cool if we could get funding to have a Calm app accessed by our students and we could incorporate it into our orientations and we could work with them? I mean, wouldn't it be cool to sit down and you have a student who has just flunked a math test and is melting down and you're saying, hey, let's go over here in the corner and do a body scan with the Calm app. And you pull out your phone and you put in some headphones. And those of you who don't know what a body scan is, it's a gradual progression and relaxation of all the body parts, and somebody will talk you through it on the app. And there, you can do it in as little as 3 minutes. It's really an introductory thing that I teach clients and that I teach students about, because it starts to have them lowering their things. So imagine if you could do that with them before they got back up to do a math test again. The other one is Insight Timer. This is one of my very favorites. Again, dealing with anxiety. These are all apps. These are all people that will walk you through meditations, there's nature sounds, there's going to sleep. It says things like, imagine yourself in a calm place, imagine yourself sweeping away those anxious thoughts. It's that kind of meditation, and it's beginner all the way to advanced. The cool thing about Insight Timer is the free app has hundreds of meditations, of body scans. It has a little area for kids. So this is a really good one for our students because it's free and you can show them how to do it. The downside of this is you got to get inside this app and you got to play with these things and listen to them and bookmark the ones you think are going to be kind of appropriate. So this is one of the things that I hope to do with my consulting with Career Learning Center here in Rapid, is to utilize some apps as a training. And so we could keep you guys posted on how that goes as well. All right, folks, I'm looking at my time. I'm 10:58. I'm just under an hour. I tried my best to do 45 minutes, and we went over a little bit. I'm going to go to the next screen here. This is my information. If you guys have questions, there's my email address and my phone number. If you have any questions that you think of after this presentation, and let's go ahead and go to the chat. So Kim, do I need to click out, or can I just click on the chat? I think I can just click on it, right? Oh, you're muted, Kim. Oh, here we go. I'm going to start at the top, guys. I can just click on the chat here.
Yep.
Okay. So Kim has posted the website links at the top of the chat. You can look at that. Steph Rittberger says that high crisis people are struggling right now, and she's used Zoom to soft hand off students to behavior management, safe families, and crisis care. That's awesome, Steph. Zoom meetings to help people with unemployment. So really packed resource materials, hundreds of calls, group texts and emails to connect, and set up a student support fund. And Lori has to get those resources out. Yes, I think using technology, and it's so funny, our clients are very resourceful with technology. They have to be. Often they don't have access. Learn this the absolute hard way. I think Stephanie made some really good points. I've been doing teletherapy now at home while homeschooling my kids for 6 weeks. And at first it was just so difficult for me to get in the groove. And now it's funny, I'm like leaning in and I'm talking. I think you just keep doing it. There are several apps that are free that you can ask them to download. You can see some of them like Zoom, all of those, you can do those face-to-face ones. And Andrew, maybe there's like something more specific in there that I'm not covering, but it's a challenge, and I think we just have to do the best we can and hope that we're going to be seeing people face to face at some point soon. Gloria put grant writing and budgeting, and I'm not sure what that means. Gloria, if you want to clarify, you sure can. John Anderson, I feel curious how often our adult ed instructors encounter and deal with the nuances of resourcefulness versus manipulation. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, John, and this is like a whole nother presentation. I do a training called Coaching versus Case Management, where we kind of go over some of these things, and maybe that'll be a future training, but I'm here to tell you that you know when your client is being manipulative. You know that. I mean, you can recognize that. But it's very important for you to reframe that. It's really important for you to say that all manipulation is being resourceful. It's very important for you to say, in the world that they live in, they don't trust me, and their first coping mechanism is going to be to see how they can manipulate this situation and feel powerful, and to see if they can trust me and test me. And sometimes they never will trust us. I mean, there are trauma runs deep. And I'm so glad you asked that, John, too. Next week, in my webinar next week, we're going to talk about, the first part is going to be what I call a mini poverty 101. We're going to really talk about the world in which they live in and why they use manipulation as a coping skill. So join me next week, John, for more on that. Let's see. Oh, I think Gloria was talking about granting and budgeting when she was talking about the most stressful parts of our job. Yes, 100%. And again, we don't have total control over that. It's really difficult. What can we do? How can we innovate? It's the proactiveness of that lowers the stress, but it is that. And I'm reading some people's, I have no time for hobbies, right? Well, I want to say something about that too. And the third webinar that I'm going to do, Crisis to Clarity, we're going to talk about time and kind of designing your life and a crisis and how a crisis really gives us permission to do that and emotionally spurs us on to do that. And it is true, with all of the things we have, we will fill up our time. So Kim, join me for that and see if you change your mind a little bit on that. You go camping, Kim. Okay. Okay. I think Steph is talking about gratitude journals with high crisis. Definitely. I'm just going through here and I think, let's see. Oh, Brenda Bloomberg likes Calm too. So Brenda, if you guys know Brenda, you can reach out to her for some specifics. And the sleep stories are great. Listening to Native American music is calming. It's amazing. They have wonderful nature sounds, wonderful music. Insight Timer also has spirituality. You can filter by spirituality. So if you have clients who are Buddhist or Christian, and they really want to identify that way, you can kind of do those kind of things as well. So I hate things that tell me to be calm. They give me anxiety. This is Kim. That's funny. It is true. It won't tell you it, Kim. It will be a soft invitation for you to experience calm. Okay. Okay, guys. I think that that's pretty much all we have in the chat. I'm going to pop up here to the gallery so I can see myself. I get closer in there. I just want to say thank you. I'm going to try to get off and be respectful of your time. I look forward to, again, the encouraging script will be posted on the website if you want a list of those. I'm so looking forward to next week where we're going to talk about supporting learners in the classroom and beyond. We're going to talk about how we can do some of the things that we know about brain and trauma to leverage outcomes in the classroom and supporting them outside, which we know we need to do because of their high crisis lives. So thank you, everybody. And I appreciate your time. See you next week.
Thank you, Tracy.
Bye, Kim. Yep.